Welcome back. A U.S. drone strike in Baghdad last night killed a high-ranking Hezbollah commander. The commander was connected to the attack that killed 3 U.S. troops in Jordan last month. Meanwhile, Iran's ambassador to the United Nations is now admitting that Tehran has been arming and empowering Palestinian resistance groups in the region. But he claimed that the terrorist groups are making their own decisions. Joining me right now is Florida Congressman Brian Mast, a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee and a U.S. Army veteran. He is a recipient of the Bronze Star Medal and the Purple Heart Medal. And, Congressman, we always thank you so much for your incredible service with honor to this country. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is Iran trying to just mislead here, saying, oh, yes, we armed everybody, but it's their decision if they want to use that in a terrorist way?
Of course they are. They're constantly trying to mislead, whether it's their support of the Houthis, whether it's their support of Hezbollah, of Hamas, of take your pick of the entities. They're always going to present that their hands are off of it. And you have all of this going on in the midst of Israel and Hamas meeting together in Cairo. You have Blinken speaking with them, trying to pressure Israel to do a multi-month ceasefire in a moment that you had just days ago announced that there were an additional 34 hostages that were killed and the bodies aren't being returned. And the big problem that I see in all of this is, yes, I'm glad that our CENTCOM commander, who I know personally, capable individual, decorated Ranger, has the targets, has the capability to destroy those targets. But at the same time that he has those capabilities, he has the president constantly speaking out of both sides of his mouth, where we'll kill Iranians or kill those that are participating, but then the president will say, no, listen, we don't want war with you. We don't want this. Every instance is dealing with the president messing it up politically because he's going to speak out of both sides of his mouth. Well, that's the hamstring.
It's true because he's, supposed to be acting tough, that he's going to retaliate, and then he says, but we don't want a widening war.
That's it. And, we used to have as America a policy of selective ambiguity where, we will strike at the time and place of our choosing, but it's going to be strong. It's going to be effective. We're not going to worry about proportionality. And you should have the fear of God if you provoke an American attack. But that's not what we have out of the administration. They're going to do the bare minimum of attack, not hit for every target that they can, do it after there's already attack instead of hitting the individuals that might be planning an attack. And again, you don't have the selective ambiguity. You have let's call it a transparent weakness. And
Tiana, you brought up a great point earlier. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken is in Tel Aviv right now, and Blinken appears optimistic that a peace deal between Hamas and Israel could still be reached, despite Prime Minister Netanyahu calling the proposal delusional. Watch this.
What I can tell you about these discussions is that while there are some clear non-starters in Hamas's response, we do think it creates space for agreement to be reached. And we will work at that relentlessly until we get there.
Yeah, I mean, look, the U.S. wants Israel to do a ceasefire. Tiana, jump in here. Despite the fact that it's retaliating for an attack on them, which was unprovoked.
It's as though they're terrified now that Israel's about to win this war, right? They control 75% of the Gaza Strip. The Hamas is correctly terrified. And yet you have Blinken meeting with Abbas in the West Bank saying, oh, we're still pursuing Palestinian statehood. Okay, I'm not saying that's a bad goal in a vacuum, but in response to Hamas succeeding in the most deadly attack on Jews since the Holocaust, you don't reward them with that, much less hope that somehow you could put Fatah and Abbas in charge of Gaza. When Gaza doesn't want that, right? The Gazan Palestinians do not think that Abbas is radical enough. They want Hamas in power, which is why Hamas has to be destroyed. Yeah. It is, the administration wants $16 billion for Israel, but then also working against their interests. Isn't Bibi totally right just to say, no, let's just win it?
And Congressman, why are the Republicans just rolling over here? And now they're all debating this, money to Ukraine and money to Gaza, and forget the border. The White House is attempting to use the failed Senate border bill to blame Republicans for the border crisis. Your thoughts?
Yeah. Look, clearly the president can secure the border if he wants. If we put this in military parlance, he would be in violation of his first general order for all military. I will guard everything within the limits of my post and quit my post only when properly relieved, or dereliction of duty. They have no interest in it. thank God that the Republicans in the Senate decided they weren't going to take up that bill that was being pushed forward there to allow 4,000 or 5,000, however many through a day. But again, this is another example of both sides of the president's mouth as well. Clearly, Republicans aren't to blame. We do everything that we can to push them to secure the border, which they can do. But he'll go out there and say, no, it's secure, it's safe, it's humane, it's all of these things, while everybody's watching on video people pour across through, or them cutting down fences, or telling Texas to take down containers that are physically blocking people from coming through. It's all both sides of their mouth.
Yeah, and I spoke with President Trump about this the other day in an exclusive interview, and he's questioning why Biden is saying anything about his response to Iran. Why warn them? Watch this. What should be the response from the United States, and what do you think about Biden's response?
Well, if you're going to not want a widening war, then you're going to have to be a lot tougher initially.
He showed his cards.
Because right now, number one, he shouldn't even be talking about what he's going to do. He shouldn't say he's going to do anything. He's going to do much or very little. But he's incompetent. Everybody knows it.
Todd Pyro, your reaction?
I mean, that is the overall point. But Congressman, I've been, for the first 90 minutes of this program, pretty hard on Republicans today. Why aren't all Republicans in lockstep with these general notions? I know you're on board, but it seems like there are too many members of the Republican Party that are, like I used the phrase earlier, looking this gift horse in the mouth. All the issues are on your side. Why can't Republicans get the ball over the finish line and realize, hey, we have a chance of winning this election and actually bringing our country back?
This is the best answer that I can give you, and it's partially a non-answer. Don't ask me to explain the unexplainable. It is beyond me, personally, why everybody is not on that same page because of the facts that have been laid out for all years of the Biden presidency, because of the stark contrast that you can see of what success looked like under the Trump administration with his policies and what failure looks like under the Biden administration with his policies. It is beyond me, and I cannot explain the unexplainable.
Well,
and I'm sorry, that's the best I can give you on that.
No one can explain it. No one can explain why Joe Biden is so soft on our number one adversary, China. No one can explain why Joe Biden did not enforce sanctions on Iran for 3 years, enabling Iran to generate billions of dollars in oil revenue and back these maniacs, Hezbollah and Hamas, and their effect on Israel, Congressman. So,
Marie,
where is this going
Marie,
then? I mean, you've got deadlines coming up.
We can't say all of this.
I'm sorry?
We can't say all of this, though. We got to see President Trump in action and enforce all of those policies and see what it did for America. That's why he will go down as the greatest foreign policy president, because he did not allow foreign intelligence agencies to know what he was going to do or even be able to calculate what they think he might do. Was he serious about doing this, or was he bluffing about doing this? They would never know. They knew that his domestic policy was in lockstep. It didn't matter how much the mainstream media was trying to bash him and create chaos around him and his policies, securing the southern border, preventing terrorists from coming into the United States of America, dealing with Kim Jong-un and North Korea and everything else that he did. Doesn't matter how successful those policies were. The mainstream media bashed him, tried to make chaos, and he still did it, and it prevented any foreign adversaries from being able to calculate that they knew what he was going to do, and America had that strength.
Yeah,
and that's what we know about his policies.
That is what we know. Congressman, it's great to see you this morning. Thanks so much.
All the best.
And to you. Brian Mast joining us. Quick break, and then Biden's border crisis spirals out of control. 1 million migrants have crossed the border just since October.